Have you ever been in the middle of a completely legal home renovation, only to have some entitled kid march onto your property like he was directing traffic, waving his hands and declaring that his mother had the power to overrule county law? Sounds ridiculous, right? But that's exactly the chaos I found myself dealing with. And what started as harmless morning construction spiraled into a showdown involving shouting, flashing lights, handcuffs, and a brutal lesson about what happens when arrogance slams headfirst into reality. It all kicked off on a bright Saturday morning. My renovation crew had just pulled in, ready to continue building the new extension on the side of my house. Nothing shady, nothing questionable. Every permit I needed had been stamped, approved, and filed with the county. I had waited months for reviews, shelled out thousands in fees, and finally, construction was in full swing. But apparently, my neighbor Karen believed she had other plans. She'd been dropping snarky comments for weeks. "This will ruin the neighborhood," or "we'll see how long this lasts." I ignored her, assuming she was just resistant to change. But the real chaos began when her son, let's call him Brad, came marching over like he owned the entire street. Brad was in his late 20s, unemployed from everything I'd observed, and still living at home with Karen. He strutted across my driveway with his chest puffed out and yelled, "Stop. You can't build here. My mom's the HOA president. She can override whatever paper you've got." My crew let out a chuckle, assuming it had to be a joke. But Brad was dead serious. He started pacing in front of the work zone, physically blocking workers from carrying lumber and threatening to call the city inspector himself. I grabbed my folder, opened it right in front of him, and said, "These are signed county permits. Your mom has zero authority over county law." But Brad sneered. "You don't get it. My mom runs this neighborhood. If she says no, then it's no. And the cops will back her up." I was stunned not just by the confidence, but by the fact that he genuinely believed his mother's HOA title somehow trumped actual regulations. My crew stood around awkwardly, unsure whether to keep working or wait. When I told Brad to move, he dug his heels in even deeper. He planted himself in the middle of my driveway, pulled out his phone, and shouted, "I'm calling her right now. You're gonna regret ever trying to build this." I didn't realize it then, but that call to Karen was the first spark that ignited everything. The shouting match, the police arrival, and eventually the click of handcuffs. Brad's call escalated fast. Within minutes, I heard the sharp clack of sandals on pavement, and the piercing voice that could probably cut through steel. Karen had arrived. She stormed onto my property like she was descending the steps of a courtroom, pointing before she even reached the driveway. "So, you think you can just ignore me?" she barked. "I told you weeks ago this construction wasn't happening. You're ruining property values. You're disturbing the peace. And frankly, it looks hideous." I took a steady breath. "Karen, this is fully legal. These are approved permits. The county gave me the green light." She folded her arms like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. "I am the HOA. My word overrides whatever permits you to think you have. If I say stop, you stop. Simple." Brad grinned behind her, thrilled she'd arrived to take control. My construction crew exchanged confused looks, unsure whether to resume work or keep watching the unfolding drama. Tools were down, and suddenly the job site had turned into an audience silently leaning on shovels, enjoying the live show. I tried logic. "Karen, the HOA has no jurisdiction over county-issued permits. This isn't up for debate. It's the law. You can't override it." She leaned in, voice dripping with supreme confidence. "Oh, I can. And I will. The police know me. And if you don't stop this mess right now, you'll be the one in handcuffs, not my son." Brad immediately chimed in. "Yeah, tell him, Mom. He thinks he's smarter than the HOA." And then, right there in my driveway, she whipped out her phone and dialed 911. She reported me for illegal construction and for harassing the neighborhood, speaking so theatrically. You'd think she was describing a bank robbery instead of a room addition. When she hung up, she turned to me with a smug grin. "They'll be here any minute. And when they arrive, I'll make sure they shut all of this down. You'll be looking at fines, maybe even jail." I wanted to laugh at how delusional it all sounded, but my crew looked uneasy. They didn't want trouble. Brad continued pacing like he suddenly had a supervisory role on my project, barking out fake orders for everyone to stop working. 15 minutes later, the sound of sirens drifted down the street. Karen's grin stretched wider. Brad puffed himself up like a rooster. Neighbors peeked through blinds and wandered onto porches, eager for a dose of morning entertainment. What none of them realized was that this spectacle was not going to end the way Karen had pictured it. Those flashing lights were about to flip everything on its head. The patrol car rolled to a stop right in front of my driveway, lights strobing, neighbors whispering as if they were watching a live episode of some chaotic reality show. Karen and Brad strutted toward the officers like they were meeting their reinforcements arriving on the battlefield. Two officers stepped out, one tall, adjusting his hat, and the other flipping open a small notepad. Before I could even say hello, Karen exploded into her performance. "Officers, thank goodness you're here. This man is conducting illegal construction on my property line, disturbing the neighborhood, and refusing to follow our homeowners association rules. I need you to shut this down immediately," Brad piled on. "He's been threatening you, too. We told him to stop, but he got aggressive. My mom is the HOA president. She has final say." The taller officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, is this your property?" Karen scoffed dramatically. "It doesn't have to be my property. The HOA has authority. I represent every homeowner on the street. That's more power than some flimsy permit." Finally, I stepped forward. I pulled out my folder like a shield and handed over every official document. "These are my county-approved permits, signed, sealed, stamped. Everything about this project is completely legal. And as for them," I gestured toward Karen and Brad, "they've been trespassing, obstructing my workers, and making threats." The officers flipped through the paperwork. Their entire demeanor changed. One of them looked up at Karen, expression blank, almost bored. "Ma'am, this is valid. The county permits override of any HOA guidelines. He's fully within his rights." Karen's jaw dropped open. Brad stared as someone had just shown him a complex math equation. That can't be right," Karen sputtered. "I'm the HOA. I know the law." The shorter officer shook his head. "No, ma'am. You don't override the county. You've been misinformed." That's when Karen unraveled. She started shouting about conspiracies, corruption, and favoritism, claiming the officers must be on my payroll. Brad escalated it further, stepping between the officers and my crew, shouting at the workers to stop construction immediately. The taller officer's patience snapped. "Sir, step aside. You're obstructing." But Brad didn't move. He puffed out his chest and glared at me like this was some old Western standoff. "No, if you won't stop him, I will. My mom said so." That one act defying direct police orders was the crack that split everything wide open. Because the officer's next move involved handcuffs, Brad stood there like a human barrier, arms out, blocking the officers as if he had been sworn in as the neighborhood's guardian. Karen screamed behind him, her voice shrill with desperation. "Don't let them bully you, Brad. Stand your ground. They can't touch you. We'll sue if they try." The taller officer's expression hardened. "Sir, final warning. Step aside, or you will be detained for obstruction." Brad smirked, puffing out his chest even more. "You don't scare me. My mom says you work for us. We're the HOA. We make the rules." That was it. The officer moved lightning fast, grabbing Brad's wrist and twisting it behind his back. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed across the driveway. Brad's bravado evaporated on the spot. His face drained of color as reality hit him like a brick wall. Hey, what are you doing?" he cried. Karen shrieked, sprinting toward them. "That's my son. He didn't do anything wrong. You can't arrest him. I forbid it." The shorter officer stepped in front of her with calm authority. "Ma'am, your son interfered with the lawful construction project and ignored repeated police orders. He is under arrest for obstruction." Karen's jaw quivered with rage. She stomped her foot like a toddler denied a treat. "This is abuse of power. We're the HOA. We own this neighborhood. You'll regret this when the board hears about it." But shouting didn't change a thing. Brad, red-faced and panicked, was guided toward the patrol car, sputtering, Mom, do something. Get me out of this, they can't do this to me. Karen chased after him, pleading, arguing, threatening, cycling through every tactic in her arsenal. The officers stayed calm, professional, and unmistakably unimpressed. Neighbors who had been hiding behind their curtains now stepped fully onto porches, whispering and snapping pictures. For the first time, the infamous neighborhood tyrant wasn't in control of the narrative. Once Brad was secured in the cruiser, the taller officer returned to me. "Sir, you're clear to continue your renovations. If they harass you again, call us immediately. We'll add trespassing charges next time." I nodded, grateful. My crew, relieved beyond measure, picked up their tools and resumed work, each hammer strike sounding like a victory drum. Karen, however, wasn't done. She stood at the edge of my driveway, shaking her fist, screaming that this wasn't over, but the truth was obvious. The reign of Karen and her self-deluded son ended the moment the law stepped in. The patrol car pulled away with Brad inside. One thought crossed my mind. You can argue with paperwork. You can argue with logic, but when you challenge the law armed with nothing but arrogance, you're guaranteed to lose. Did you enjoy watching Karen's chaos unravel? If you did, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my shoes. Your support keeps these wild stories coming.